Okay. Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Whimsy North Podcast. I'm Margaret from Whimsy North, and I'm coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. Okay. Things to share with you, but first I wanted to thank everyone for watching my first episode that I put out. I was truly blown away by how many of you not only watched it, but the comments. I can't tell you how much your comments and your feedback and your encouragement meant to me, and how they just really made me realize that what I'm doing here with knitting and sharing it with all of you is something that resonates with other people. So thank you so much. I have a couple more words on that, but I'm going to save that to the end so we can move on to the knitting. So today I'm going to show you some new designs that are out. Here, I have my outline again. And I keep looking down at it. So I'm going to show you some new designs that are out, some designs that are finished, but I haven't published them yet, and then what I'm currently knitting, and answer some of your questions. So thanks to those who submitted questions via my Google form. I'm going to answer some of those at the end, and it kind of has to do with this shawl that I'm wearing today. So this is my Pink Sky at Night shawl that I designed and published about 2 summers ago, I think. It's 2-color brioche, so I'm going to talk a little bit about brioche later and answer some brioche questions. Okay, so the first design that just came out, so this podcast is going to come out on Thursday, March 30th, I think it is. Let's see, 31st. So Thursday, March 31st should be today. I'm recording it on Tuesday. And my first design to show you is actually a pattern that came out last week on the Knit Picks website and also in book and ebook format. So it is my Valensole sock, if you can see. This is the first sample that I knit using the Knit Picks Hawthorne Speckle. So it has this like fun dip stitch that goes down the front, and it's a shorty sock. And then the second sample I knit in their static yarn. So this is the one that's published. This was actually my very first submission to a publication that I ever did. So last summer I started kind of thinking of ways that I could push myself and try new things in my design business, and one of those was to submit a design to a publication. So when Knit Picks came out and said that they were looking for colorful sock designs that did not use color work but more showed just like textured patterns in order to show off their colorful yarns, I came up with this sock design thinking that it would be a fun one to knit up in different yarns. So when I submitted the design, I actually had this yarn in my stash, this speckled from Knit Picks. So I knit this as my initial submission sample. Instead of doing just a swatch, I thought that it was actually pretty quick to knit, and then it would give me an idea of what the entire sock would look like. So I knit up the whole sock and put together a PDF of here is my design, how I think it fits into your collection, and then sent that off to Knit Picks. It was chosen, and they said, I said, here's some yarns that I think that it might work with, and static was one of them. So they said, well, we're looking to showcase more patterns for static, so would you be willing to try out a new sample in that yarn? So that's when this one came about. And the static yarn is very unique because it has like a self-striping, but also some specklies in there. So it's just got a lot of movement going on in the yarn. So kind of plays well with the dip stitch that goes down the front. And so this I've been working on since last June, and it just was released in, like I said, ebook form, and then the book is actually back ordered on their website until April. But you can get the pattern individually on KnitPicks, or you can get the ebook, and it's been so fun to finally have something that I can share that I've been working on since, I think, June it was. So that's the Valensole socks. And if you watched my last episode, you know that I was having like a French moment and really loving a lot of things French. So Valensole, and again, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I have to say that after I said lavande crop for the sweater I was wearing from my last episode, someone from Provence, I forgot their name, commented and said, "Oh, you said it correctly," which honestly like made my day that someone that, so thank you. It's just so cool to see people from all over the world, you know, watching my knitting. So this is the Valensole sock. Sorry to digress, but Valensole, I don't know if I'm saying that one correctly, is a city in Provence, France, that is known for their lavender fields. And again, I love lavender. So just this design down the front of the sock really made me think of rows of lavender. So I named it Valensole after the city in Provence that has lavender fields. They even have like a lavender festival, which I'd love to go to someday. So that's on my list. Okay, so that's the Valensole socks. And then back to socks again, which I'm kind of all about socks lately. I shared these last week, but these are my tenny socks, and they are currently in testing, and they actually will be out. The pattern will be released tomorrow on April 1st. So you'll be able to find this on Etsy and Ravelry if you're looking for a new longer sock pattern that's really fun mindless knit with the fun texture down the front. If you want more details, you can watch my last episode where I talk a little bit more about these. So coming tomorrow, tenny socks. Okay, so one of the things I'm most excited about that I finished, I actually have been doing a fair amount of knitting, and I think part of that is this podcast and being able to share everything with you guys. So not that I don't love taking the time to knit, that is one of my favorite things. It's just with everything else I have going on with 3 kids and another job, I always feel kind of guilty taking time to knit, even though it's part of this job, I guess you would say. But I felt I really wanted to make sure that I had a lot of things to share with you guys and show you for this podcast. So I made sure to do a good job getting my knitting done. So the next thing is that colorwork cowl that I was working on. I just finished seaming it. Yay! It's so awesome. Okay, I thought it would take me about 10 minutes to seam, and it actually took over 30, so that's okay. This still, again, does not have a name. I have no idea what I'm going to name it, so I got to really think about that one. If you did not watch my last episode, this is a colorwork cowl that's stranded colorwork, and it starts with a provisional cast on. So here's like the seamless provisional cast on. Then you knit a couple repeats of the color work, and then switch to a solid, which this beautiful Ken yarn solid, and then it is Kitchener stitched at the end to create this beautiful cowl. Now I did a little Mobius, is that how you call it? Twist. And the reason I really love the Kitchener on this is because it makes it completely seamless. You can wear it so many different ways. So here, I'm gonna try it on for you. Okay, so, quick change. So you can wear it with all the color work in the front. So it is so cozy, seriously. I cannot wait to wear this in the winter at hockey games or outside on our backyard rink. It's just like the perfect fit where it's not too tight, but it's not too loose. Well, that's one thing about cowls is like sometimes they can be so loose that there's this like gap and then it doesn't feel warm and snuggly enough on your neck, which is really the point of a cowl. So I love that this has like this double thick, because it's knit in the round, double thick fabric, and then it has this twist, which gives it this nice like lay, I guess you would say. So you could wear the color work all in the front, or you could wear it half and half, where you have the kind of the twist in the back, which gives, the twist in the back is kind of nice if you don't like having things too high up on your neck, or if you're wearing like your hair in a ponytail or something like that, you can twist it in the back, or you can switch the twist around to the front, give it more of like a twist detail. So you could do, you know, half and half, different sides, or you can wear it with the solid in the front. So it just makes it really versatile. I am hopefully going to be writing this pattern up soon. I actually was wanting to try and get it done yesterday, but unfortunately I had to finalize a lighting plan for a design project that I'm working on for my other job. So that had to come first. My plan is to release this cowl middle of April. So I will be calling for test knitters on Instagram, either sometime this week, I'm really hoping for. So if you're interested in test knitting this pattern, be on the lookout on Instagram. It takes 3 skeins of DK weight yarn, 2 contrasting colors for the color work, and then a solid, this is a solid, but it's a tonal, so it has like that beautiful different tones to it throughout. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. So yeah, I'll come up with a name, get the pattern written up, be searching for test knitters, and then this pattern will be out middle of April. So be on the lookout for the unnamed cowl coming soon. Okay, the next thing is, you'll remember from the last episode, if you watched it, that I was working on this fun dishcloth pattern that's knit in mosaic knitting. And I'm calling it my diamond dishcloth. Super creative, I know. So I was struggling with the edges because I just simply carried the yarn up the side, and it was kind of pulling in the middle here with that float for the mosaic. You can see this is the back side. So I decided to add an I-cord, and I love it. I think the I-cord was the perfect choice. Now, I realized as I pulled this sample out to show you today that I have not blocked it or woven in the ends, but you can already tell how the edge is just so much cleaner. So I'll show you that I-cord edge. It does pull a little bit in here, and I think once I block that, it'll be better. And I was more mindful of like not pulling that float too tight here on the slip stitches. So this is the diamond dishcloth. I'm so excited about this one. This is going to be a free pattern on my website. I hope to get it published actually by the next podcast episode. This particular one, I love the color so much. Just reminds me of like a beachy seaside theme that I think I'm going to pair it with a beautiful hand soap and gift it to my brother and sister-in-law, who last summer bought a brand new lake home, and I'm bringing my kids there this summer to stay and hang out at their lake home with them and their kids. So I thought this would be a really fun like housewarming gift for their lake home. So be on the lookout for that. It is knit with Knit Picks Dishy yarn, which makes for a great dishcloth, but it's also like really pretty. So I can imagine like hanging in your kitchen. I need to take some photos of it, but yeah. So that's done. The pattern, like I said, should be out soon, and I think it's looking really great. Okay, so I actually have one more thing to share for finished but not out yet section. And it's something that I found when I was digging around trying to find this shawl that I have no idea why I put it in the spot I did. But I was trying to find it because I wanted to show it to you today to share about my brioche knitting projects. And I found this tee that I designed and knit last summer, and then by the time I finished it and would have like gotten the pattern out, it was fall, so I really thought, I'm gonna wait and save it for next summer because it's a summer tee. So I have not written the pattern for this yet, but I will be adding it to my pattern writing list. As you can see, I have a lot of computer work to do. This is I call it my Seaside Holiday Tee. So it is knit using fingering weight yarn, and then the lace section, the lace yoke section is actually, so I knit it using one strand of fingering weight and one strand of mohair. But the more I thought about it, it actually would be nice to use like 3 strands of mohair and just like not the standard fingering weight yarn. So I'm thinking that would be an option in the pattern too, like your choice, if you want to use the fingering weight with the mohair or just the fingering weight. So I'm not sure if you can see, but it has this like beautiful halo just on the lace part. There we go, you can kind of see. So it has this like beautiful soft halo just on the lace part. And actually, I saw this done on another podcast where they did like a quick change. So I'm going to go like this. How fun was that? So this is, as I was saying, my Seaside Holiday Tee. And it is so soft and light. I love that it's fingering weight, so it's perfect for the summer. And it's just, I was inspired again by, surprise, France. This time I was inspired by Brittany, France, which again, I've never been to any of these places. I have been to Paris. I'm not sure that really counts. Is that like saying you've been to Disney World? I don't know. But it's my dream to make it over there and explore around in other places. So this was inspired by Brittany, France. I pulled some inspiration from like the Brenton tee with the stripes. It just felt very nautical, but then I did like a Whimsy North mashup with it because I love things that are classic but also fun, and I added this lace detail. So you have the lace mohair yoke and then, surprise, stripes. So this tee will come in 9 sizes and should be out May, I'm hoping. So let me know what you think about this design or any of the other designs that I'm working on. It's nice to hear people's feedback to know whether they like it or what their thoughts are. So it's got this really nice neck line that's a little bit wider, and a short sleeve. You could knit full sleeves actually if you wanted to. You don't have to make it a tee. I just thought that it was a fun, kind of lightweight summer. I like to tuck it in. So not too much ease, just like a little bit so it's not like super tight. So there you go. My Seaside Holiday Tee. And the reason I called it that actually has to do with the fact that my 3-year-old was obsessed with the show Peppa Pig, and they had this episode where they were going on a seaside holiday, and I thought, Brittany, France, and just like by the sea, and going on holiday to Brittany. And so it just like, there's a song that they sing in Peppa Pig about going on a seaside holiday, and that's where the name came from. So, inspiration from everywhere. Like I said, not great at namings. This one's named from Peppa Pig, so yeah. Next, what I am currently knitting. my Mila sweater that I showed last time. I'll grab it. Just in case you didn't watch last episode, I'll just flash it really quick here. So this is my Mila sweater. Again, just like playing around with yoke designs and a different body. I mentioned how I had run out of yarn, so I ordered more yarn because I want to make sure I finish that in order to show you guys. So I did order more yarn for my Mila sweater, and that is hopefully coming soon, and I'll be able to continue working on that. And then in the meantime, since I finished a lot of other projects, I have actually been working on not one of my own designs. It's been super fun to knit someone else's pattern. So I was gifted a kit from Annie's. Okay, so Annie's sent me over. Let's see if you can see. I'll obviously link everything below, any patterns I talk about. And I'll also link this below too. But Annie's sent me one of their new, it's Love to Knit Socks Kit Club. So they sent me the pattern for these socks. Aren't they fun? And this beautiful yarn, which I already caked up. I'll insert a picture of the yarn in the hank because it just is like so beautiful. So I'll insert that here. This is what it looks like caked up. It is like a rainbow of beautiful. I love it so much. And this is what the sock is looking like so far. It has been so fun to knit this. I'm loving it. It's a 2x2 rib to start, which is like, I think now that I knit Continental, this 2x2 rib is one of my favorite things to knit because it's so meditative. You just like knit to purl two. So I've actually been working on these a lot. We've been doing family game night after dinner almost every single night, where the number one game we've been playing is called Settlers of Catan. So I don't know if there's any other Settlers of Catan players out there, but it's a game that my family, we just love. We've been playing Settlers of Catan every night, and while I wait for everyone to like play their turn, I've been knitting on this sock. So, and I will tell you, it has not been distracting because I've won twice, which is amazing because my husband almost wins almost every single time. So thanks to this sock. I actually was really excited to get this kit. So what comes in the kit is the pattern. So here's the front of the pattern, and then the pattern inside, and then the yarn. So you get this beautiful hand-dyed yarn, and oh gosh, oh here, I have who it's by. Okay, so it's Shirsty Cat Designs. So I don't know, that might be backwards to you, so I'll just post it below. So Shirsty Cat Designs in the colorway Amorphous, I think is what it's called. Either way, it's beautiful. My 9-year-old daughter keeps telling me she's gonna try and steal these socks for me because she just loves the rainbow color so much. My plan is to wear them with my boots next winter, if we can ever get through this cold weather here in Madison, with my boots next winter. And I just think that they'd be like the perfect boot sock because they have this great ribbing that goes up. So I was very excited to try this pattern because, as I maybe mentioned at the last episode, that I've only ever knit socks with an afterthought heel, and those are all the socks I've designed. I've only ever had that because that's the construction that I learned and feel comfortable with. But these have a heel flap and a gusset. I'm knitting the heel flap right now, and it's coming along. I was a little confused at first because I've never knit a heel flap before, but it seems very self-explanatory. So with the Learn to Knit Socks Kit Clubs, You can sign up for monthly kits, and so they would send you a new sock pattern and a new beautiful hand-dyed hank of yarn to knit a different sock every month. So if you are a sock knitter, or if you know a sock knitter, I feel like this would be such an amazing gift. Ooh, I feel like this is like a good birthday, Mother's Day, Christmas, obviously, which is not right now, but gift to sign someone up for the Love to Knit socks. So I had to share that because I am loving knitting these socks that I don't have to take notes on the pattern and remember what I did next, and it's just for me. So if my heel flap is a little large because my tension's off a little bit, which I noticed that the other day for part of it, it's just for me. So okay, that is what I'm currently knitting. And then so now I'm going to go over some of the questions that were submitted by you guys. I tried to respond. I am trying to respond to all the comments, and I know I have more on my last video, so I will be getting back to those, and thank you again for submitting them. And then my Google form that I have, as I said, linked below. If you submit a comment there, I will talk about it and answer it, or I mean a question, sorry, not a comment. I will talk about it on a next episode. So one of the questions that actually was not on the Google form, but was in one of the comments, and I thought that it would be important to share, maybe for you guys to get to know me a little bit more, is when did I start knitting? So when did you start knitting? And I actually started knitting when I was 6 or 7 years old. My mom taught me. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, she was an amazing knitter, and I always wanted her to teach me how to knit. And she said she had like an age limit for when she would teach the grandkids, if interested, how to knit. And I remember it being like age 9 or 10 or something like that. And I'm sure it had to do with like the patience factor and your fine motor skills and being able to figure it out. And she didn't really want to like waste her time trying to teach, a 6-year-old how to knit. But I was determined that I really wanted to learn how to knit. So my mom and I went to the local craft store, and thinking back on this story, I don't know how my mom ever taught me how to knit, because she doesn't even really know how to knit. So I'm glad she did, because obviously now I've been doing it for a long time. But so we went and we got metal knitting needles that were like a size 8, and then some worsted weight acrylic yarn that was super cheap. And my mom cast it on the needle and then showed me how to do a knit stitch. And I would sit there and just keep knitting. The only cast on that either of us knew how to do was a backwards loop cast on. So my cast on was always really wonky and loose and the yarn or too tight. And then I would kind of have to pull the tail to even it out a little bit. And then I actually didn't know how to bind off my stitches for years. So what I would do is just thread the tail through the live stitches and call it done, because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to bind off, and neither I don't think did my mom, because I'm surprised she even taught me how. So for years I loved it so much, but I really didn't know much else. I remember getting a knitting book, but I was so young, and then reading the instructions were super confusing, and even the pictures I had no idea. And then once I got older, into high school, I still, honestly, I could maybe do a pearl stitch, but I really mostly knew how to just do a knit stitch. And so I would just knit like long scarves because I also only had straight needles. So they had the width of the scarf had to fit on the straight needle, and with my backwards loop cast on and my garter stitch. So I would knit like super long scarves. And I always thought that someday I would love to take a class so that I could learn more knitting skills. But as like a high schooler who I didn't have any friends, or like even my mom wasn't really a knitter, so I had no one to go with me. And I was so intimidated by like walking into yarn shops. We had one in Duluth, and I would go in there and everything was foreign to me. Like I had no idea that I didn't know that there were like different weights of yarn, different materials of yarn. I had not a clue. So I was terrified of being the youngest person in the knitting class and people looking at me like, what's this girl doing here? So I just knit, garter, stitch scarves until YouTube came along and thankfully got me to where I am today. Now I can more so understand knitting books because I understand like the initial language behind it, I guess you would say. Like if you understand how to read your knitting, like what a knit stitch looks like and what a purl stitch looks like, then when you read it and see it, it's easier. But I still honestly think like watching someone physically move the yarn and the needle and the stitch is way easier to learn. Like flashback to myself as a 6-year-old, which this is gonna sound like so super nerdy. But as a 6-year-old, I have these memories of like sitting in my bed in my room, knitting my garter stitch scarf. I guess you could maybe call it a scarf because honestly it was just like a long thing. Listening to Broadway musicals on my cassette tape boombox back in the 80s, early 90s. So, that honestly was like my favorite place. Like my favorite thing to do would just be to knit and listen to Broadway musicals. Andrew Lloyd Webber, shout out, Cats. Loved that. And then I would, once in a while be like, Mom, I dropped a stitch. And she would come running in and like try to fix it. Or, I would end up with these huge holes or, ladders all the way down my project. And it was just like a design piece, right? Because I had no idea how to fix it at that point in time. I could barely do a purl stitch. So that has led me over the years to where I am today. And it just goes to show that like you can really start anywhere with your craft and with your knitting, and every item that you knit teaches you something new. So, okay. The next question is from Layla, I think Layla, from New Zealand. And she was the one that asked about brioche knitting. So she said, she's looking to get into brioche knitting and wondering if I have any tutorials that might help her out. So and she loved a cowl or a scarf. I think it was a scarf that she saw on my Instagram. So I wanted to share, because I wasn't exactly sure which one that she saw, because I actually have 3 brioche patterns that are published. So I was going to show them all to you and then also direct you to some. I actually do have some tutorials for brioche knitting, and then some other ideas on ways that you can really expand your brioche. So the first pattern that I designed using brioche, because I just love this technique. This is my Nordic Sunrise Shawl. It's actually one of my most popular patterns. I designed it 2 years ago in April, and it uses 3 different colors of fingering weight yarn. This is all hedgehog fibers. I love their yarn. And so it has these garter stitch sections, if you can see, garter stitch with little noops that run down, like their noops are like little bobbles, knit in a different way. I use a crochet hook actually for these, and I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel on how to use a crochet hook to do your noops, because they're very easy if you do that. Then it melds color A with color B in this straight brioche section. Then you go on to color B garter stitch with the noops going down the center. Then you merge color B and C in the brioche, 2-color brioche section, and then C gets its own garter stitch noops. And then I use color A to do this beautiful, it's an I-cord border. This shawl is a crescent shaped shawl. It's like one of my favorites. I wear it all the time. I just love the colors and the squishiness of the brioche. So that is available on Ravelry and Etsy. I'll link it below, my Nordic Sunrise. And when I first got into designing brioche, I wanted to just do like a straight brioche stitch that didn't have any detail to it. And then it has increases on the side. So it does have some brioche increases in order to shape the shawl, but other than that, it is just straight 2-color brioche back and forth. So this is more of like a beginner brioche friendly shawl because you get to mix it up with the garter stitch and try your hand at 2-color brioche. So, and then after that, I started wanting to learn a little bit more advanced brioche patterns from Nancy Marchand, who is like the brioche knitting master. I actually took her intro, I don't remember if it's called Intro to Brioche or what it's called, but I'll link it below if she still has it, because it was on Craftsy. That's a hard word to say. Then, Craftsy, I don't know if you know, became Blueprint, and then it came Craftsy again. So it was on there. So if they still have her Intro to Brioche, I will link that for you, because that is how I got started on brioche knitting and learned the technique to start. Then I bought some of her books to learn how to do increases and decreases so that I could make that like fun fabric that has movement in it. And that's when my Pink Sky at Night shawl came. So this is a triangular shaped shawl that so it starts out with like a brioche wave pattern, 2-color brioche. So here's the back side, the wrong side, and the right side. And then it goes into just like a straight brioche, and then back into the section of wave, and then straight, and then ends in a wave. So this shawl was fun for me to design because it was a way that I could use increases and decreases in brioche, 2-color brioche knitting to design this beautiful shawl. It's one of my favorites. It also uses hedgehog fibers, and I think woolberry fibers is the light color, I believe. The light color, I think, and the dark color is hedgehog. And the reason I named it Pink Sky at Night is it has this beautiful wave pattern, which makes me think of the lake. And my mother grew up as a sailor, and one thing she would always tell me, she would say, pink sky at night, sailor's delight. Pink sky in the morning, sailor's warning. So when I was designing this with the colors and the waves, it really got me thinking about my mom and her sailing. I never realized she really inspired me that much. Maybe it's because she taught me how to knit, even though she doesn't really know how herself. So my Shout out to my mom if you're watching, by the way. Thanks for teaching me to knit. So I thought, the name Pink Sky at Night is kind of an homage to her sailing and telling me that my whole life. So now every time I see like a pink sky at night, I think of her. And so that's what this shawl is named after. So you can find this pattern actually for free on my blog. I'll link it below. I do have the PDF printable pattern on Ravelry and Etsy if you like to print your patterns that are ad-free. Otherwise, you can find this for free on whimsynorth.com. So that's my Pink Sky at Night shawl. And then my most recent, I think this was last August, brioche pattern was this cowl that I did. This uses Sorella yarn in her bulky, I think it's bulky, not chunky, bulky, yeah. So it's a bulky weight yarn, and it, this is the outside. You can see just like a circular cowl that's knit in the round, so there's no seaming. It is knit from the bottom up. And then here is the inside. That's my mailman. That's my mail person, I should say. My mail person. My mail comes through that little slot right there. It scares me almost every single time, actually. So if you heard that, that was my mail person. Okay, so this is the inside. So it's not like completely reversible because of the way that the stitches don't fully connect. But I mean, it's kind of fun. You could wear it on this side if you wanted to. So this is my bubble up cowl, and I was inspired by champagne bubbles. Just the way that they bubble up in a glass. I thought this was such a fun little way just to add like little bubbles. So this actually is a very easy way to get introduced to decreases and increases in brioche knitting. So because you're knitting along in 2-color brioche, and then you do, now that I'm looking at it, it knits this way. I mean, it could go both ways, really. So you start along in 2-color brioche in the round, which is great because you're not like knitting across and then knitting back, and then you just do the two, like one color and then the other color all the way around. So 2-color brioche in the round, then you do just a little increase on every other brioche stitch, knit straight 2-color again, and then do a little decrease. So it's really fun, actually. I'll put that on for you so you can see. Oh gosh, it's like getting dressed on camera. You can see where it, so it's like, gosh, this is super, this outfit, I'm telling ya, these do not go together. I love this neon pink though. This is like so my color. And I'm not sure how it's totally reading on camera, but it's this beautiful cozy cowl that's like super squishy, and I'm telling you, if you knit this, it is impressive. Your friends will be like, you made that? And so if you're looking to knit brioche and you want to try your hand at some like increases and decreases, this bubble up cowl is a fun one. So you can find this pattern on Etsy and Ravelry, or linked in the description below. How many times can I say that in this podcast? So some resources that I would recommend for brioche knitting to answer Layla's question. I have 3 videos on my YouTube channel. The first one is how to knit 2-color brioche. So you can check that one out, and that's just a very introductory to like how to get started, how to read your knitting. It is knit or demonstrated flat, so not, this one is knit in the round, but actually once you learn how to knit brioche flat, you can learn how to knit it in the round. The pattern will explain it too. So is a good introductory video to kind of try your hands at a swatch of knitting 2-color brioche. And then I have 2 other videos. The first one is how to do an increase in 2-color brioche, and the second one is how to do a decrease. So I'll explain to you how you can do like a left leaning or a right leaning increase, left leaning decrease, right leaning increase, and they're all done a little bit differently. So I actually like to use that as a resource right before I go to knit a pattern. Is like, okay, remind myself which way is the left leaning and which way is the right leaning. Because, for example, like in this pattern here, you have this you have an increase here, and then you have a left leaning decrease. So it'll show you, so you can find those 2 videos on my YouTube channel. And then I also have a blog post about brioche knitting on my website that just kind of goes over a little bit of like what brioche knitting is and some other links to resources that you can use. Like I said, Nancy Marchant's class is great. And then there's also Leslie, oh shoot, I'm gonna forget her name, Leslie, with Knit Graffiti. I'll link her below. Leslie with Knit Graffiti has a brioche knitting masterclass. I have not taken it, so I can't speak to what's included, but it looks like very thorough. Her brioche designs are amazing. She is known for her brioche, and so I'm sure she would be a wonderful teacher if you're looking for like a full masterclass on how to do brioche knitting. So I will link her class below for you. The next question, and I thought this one, I had to, like, this is not knitting related, but I just love these types of questions. So Gail from Canada asked what my wall color was. And I thought that was super fun because being in interior, I'm not an interior designer, I just do it for my job. So I'm not like technically an interior designer. But so this wall color here, which is hard to read on this camera, I think, 'cause it feels kind of more, it's definitely a brighter white. And it is pure white from Sherwin-Williams. So if you're interested in painting your walls white, it is pure white. I thought it might be a little too bright to start when we first remodeled our home. So we bought this home about 5 years ago and then ended up gutting it. It's almost 100 years old. Its birthday is going to be in the year 2026. It'll turn 100, so we'll have to have a celebration for my home. And so I wanted everything to be like crisp and white, and I now want to paint it. But anyways, pure white from Sherwin-Williams if you're looking for a white paint color. And then there were actually 2 questions on the Google Forms from 2 different people regarding colorwork knitting. And I thought that I would save that for the next podcast because I really want to pull together some great resources that I can share with you guys. And I just didn't have time to kind of really put a good list together. So some of the things that they were asking about was, you know, tension and places you can go to learn how to do better colorwork knitting. And I'm assuming most of them were looking to do stranded colorwork in the questions. So I'm going to talk about that in the next podcast. So if you're interested in learning about colorwork knitting and some tips and tricks and more about that, tune in to episode 3 where I will really kind of go over a lot of good colorwork knitting, how I've grown in my colorwork knitting, and resources that you can use to become better at colorwork knitting. So stay tuned for that. So then my last question was from Becca from Wisconsin. Yay, shout out to Becca. So her question was about what are some of the first steps to finding test knitters as a brand new designer, and what classes or books helped me with grading my patterns. So I thought this was a great question, especially because I remember as a new designer, like I had no idea what the process really was. to putting out a design. I honestly thought like, oh, I'm going to create this knit item and I'm gonna write down the pattern and then I'm gonna put it on Ravelry. And ta-da! I'm gonna make thousands of dollars. I'm just kidding. Well, maybe I thought that. But so little did I know that there are a few more steps to not only getting your design out there, but also having people buy it. So one of them that I wasn't super familiar with was actually test knitting. And it was Instagram that kind of gave me a little bit more insight into what test knitting was. And so to be honest, the first step that I took to learn more about test knitting was to become a test knitter. I wasn't sure what the process was, and everyone kind of does it a little differently. So I personally use Instagram for not only my test knit calls, but also to communicate with my test knitters via the direct messaging, and then also, so mostly through Instagram. But I know a lot of designers will use Ravelry, so they'll use their Ravelry group for doing test knit calls, and they'll put it out on their Ravelry group. There's also a lot of designers that will use their email newsletter, where if you sign up to be on their test knit email newsletter, they'll email out the test call, and then that's how they'll communicate all the information. And then there's also something called Yarn Pond, which is a website that designers pay to use this website, like a monthly fee or a per pattern fee. I've looked into it, but I haven't jumped into that yet, so I can't specifically speak to the pricing. But it's free for test knitters to participate on this website, and then the designers pay a fee. So I kind of feel like you got to feel out where is your community. So when I first started designing and knitting, Instagram became where my community was. I do have a Whimsy North group on Ravelry because I used it for a knit along that I did 2 years ago, and I hope to kind of get more into that. But you know, there's so many places that you can really spend your time. And for me, Instagram was just a place that I felt comfortable with, and just was able to make those connections. If you don't have an Instagram following or a Ravelry group, because if you're brand new, you most likely don't have a Ravelry group, and or an email newsletter if you haven't been doing anything prior to your first designs, I would recommend Yarn Pond because it is a place where test knitters that are there to test knit are already hanging out and looking for designs to test knit. So I would maybe check that one out first. But just to kind of explain how I got into it is I went on Instagram and started posting my just knits in general, knitting items, just to kind of start having content to post. And then I saw a couple other people posting about like, oh, this is my test knit. And I'm like, test knit? What the heck is that? So I did a little bit more research and started kind of like direct messaging or kind of communicating with other, not only knitters, but designers, and seeing kind of what they were doing. And that's when I saw someone post a call for a test knit, and I reached out and applied, I guess you would say. Like sometimes people do like just comment or send a message or all sorts of ways, and I got it. So I was able to do a test knit, and that was honestly the way that I kind of saw the behind the scenes, because I could see how that designer communicated with her test knitters, what information she provided us with, and then what we were giving back to her in terms of like, here is what the requirements for the test knit are. So I did that for a couple different designers because everyone's different, and I wanted to see like one was for a hat, so what would that entail. So if you are looking to get started as a designer, in running test knits, first I would recommend doing someone else's test knit if you haven't already, which you might have. Secondly, if you're looking to find test knitters, like I said, if you're new, I would check out Yarn Pond, or honestly, my first test knit that I called for, I just reached out to some of the people I had communicated with on Instagram and said, hey, I'm looking to design my first pattern, or I have designed my first pattern. It's a hat. So being that it was a hat, it was like an easy test knit. It's definitely easier to get test knitters for super bulky hats because people can knit them in an hour. And so that's like a quick turnaround than it is to get people to test knit like a sweater. So if you're, if you have some friends on Instagram or on Ravelry that are test knitters, you can reach out to them and say, hey, would you be interested in test knitting my first pattern? And that's actually how I did it the first time, is I asked them. And then from there, then I would kind of put the test knit call out and hopefully get enough people. It's interesting because there are some patterns that I put out there and it's like 50 plus people are banging down the door to test knit it. And then there's some where it's like, not a lot. So it just really depends on the pattern, and I think, your timeline and all of that. So sometimes it's easy to not have as high of expectations, I guess, when you're first starting out. So I hope that answers that question. And then the second question, what classes or books to help with grading? If you watched my last episode, maybe I might have mentioned that I am terrible at math. I hate math. Math is the worst. And I chose a profession that uses a lot of math. I don't know why, but I love it so much. That's how much I love knitting. I love knitting so much that I do math, which I hate. But so to learn to grade, honestly, one of the ways I started learning to grade patterns, and this is probably totally backwards, is by reading other people's patterns. This is probably ridiculous, I don't know why I did it this way, but I would pull up a pattern that I liked, and then I would refigure the math. Like I would look at their schematic and what their gauge was, and then what their cast on was, and I would say, okay, so that would be this many stitches, and then that would equal this, and I would just write it all out. Does that sound silly? I know, that's so silly. But for some reason, because I'm a visual person, I used to tell this to my husband all the time in work and business. He would send these spreadsheets and I say, can you put it in a chart form? He's like, no, it just it comes in numbers. I'm like, yeah, I see numbers and it looks foreign to me. I like to see it in pictures. Can you tell me is this, are we in the red or are we in the green, or the black I should say? Is this good or bad? So for me, I like being able to look at the schematic and then drawing out what I wanted to design, and then what the end result size I wanted to be, take my gauge and rewrite it. I'm not sure that was the best way to learn, but I also then purchased a few books. So I'll link them below because I forgot to grab them. But there's a couple of sweater design books, and that really helped me with grading, because to be honest, when it comes to something like this, there is no grading involved. It is a one size fits all cowl. And same with shawls. That's one reason why I really enjoy breaking up my knitting with cowls and shawls, because the only math involved is like, how wide do you want it? How long do you want it? And then bada bing, bada boom, you get one size fits all. Versus having to come up with multiple sizes. So that was kind of my progression of like, first trying to backtrack other people's patterns to be like, okay, that makes sense. Then to buying some sweater design books where they walk you through like, if your gauge is this, then you should cast on that. So kind of seeing how that worked. And then my next step was taking the sweater design school, which I mentioned in my last podcast, that Claire with Sister Mountain, I bought that course from her last January. And that's when I learned how to use a spreadsheet. So my husband is a business major, so spreadsheets were like his jam. Now I was a communication major, so didn't do a lot of spreadsheets. Did a lot of talking, not a lot of spreadsheets. So I could use Excel. Actually, I really like to use Excel for my color work charts. Again, pictures, not numbers. And then, so Claire showed us how to use Excel or Google Sheets, whichever. She actually uses Google Sheets, but I'm just more comfortable with Microsoft Excel. So she showed us how to like design your pattern and then grade it using the spreadsheet, the magic of the spreadsheet, to grade it across all the sizes. And I honestly remember when I first started taking that section of the course and would just like put a number in and then go boop all the way across. And I turned to my husband and I'm like, dude, where has this been all my life? And why is this so magical? And he's like, are you talking about spreadsheets? And I'm like, yeah, who knew you could do all of this? He thought I was crazy, but it was like life-changing. So Claire's course, which is not always open, so I think she only does it like once a year in January, so you already probably missed being able to participate in that. But I know Tian, I'm going to link her below too. She has a grading course. I have not taken it, but I have taken her How to Get Published course, and so I know she's an amazing teacher. And I also follow her on Instagram, so I know she has like really great tips and insights for designers. So I'm going to link Tian's information below, because if you're looking for a grading course, I have heard great things about hers. If you're looking for she also has like what do you call it? A pattern publishing community. So if you're, really getting started in designing, I highly recommend checking out Tian, because she has amazing resources that I think would be very helpful along the way. So I will link her below. And yeah, so I honestly am still learning, because there's times when I feel like I got it figured out, and then I go to grade a pattern and I'm like, what is happening? So in the past, I would create a design, cast on, do my swatch, cast on, knit the sample, and then take notes throughout for myself, like for my own size. Like, this is how many I cast it on for my neckline, and and then I split the sleeves, and, yada yada. And that's how, and then I would take those notes, and then I would create the spreadsheet and go, okay, well, I'm this size, and now everyone else should be like this. And I found that that's an okay way to do it. But with my Mila sweater, and this is how Claire recommends you do it, is where you come up with a design inspiration, draw out the design, do multiple swatches to make sure that everything really works, and then before you even cast on, you grade the pattern. So this pattern is already fully graded for 9 sizes. And I might add kid sizes, because would this not be so cute on a newborn? I think so. Anyways, so this pattern is already fully graded in the magical spreadsheet that is on Microsoft Excel. So once I'm done, so now I'm literally knitting this from that spreadsheet. Instead of I'll go along usually on my old, like on this pattern, for example, I would knit along, and then I'm like, okay, now I need to increase to here. Okay, so I would figure out the math for myself for just this one size. And then I would knit along, and then I'd be like, okay, well now I need to split the sleeves. Okay, and then I would, decide how to do that. This one is it's all there. I'm still taking notes as I go, because there's little things obviously that that aren't in a spreadsheet. That's okay, knit to here, do this, whatever. So I still am taking notes, but my hope is that when I'm done with the sample, it'll be that much easier to write the pattern and get it done, because I already have the grading completed. So that is one tip that I would give you, is to grade all sizes before you cast on. Another reason for that. So as you can see, there's different design details in this sweater. For example, there's the short rows, there is the yoke section, which has one colorwork chart, and then the body section, which has a totally different colorwork chart. And then at the end, there's ribbing, there's ribbing on the bottom, all sorts of things. So one thing that Claire teaches you is how to round numbers. So, and make it even, and the placement of charts. So this particular chart is a 12 or 14 stitch chart. It actually originally was 13, and I was like, 13, good luck grading that. It's an odd number. That sounds ridiculous. Maybe it's still 13. Either way, I changed the chart because I was like, okay, something's got to change here, so that, oh yeah, I think I made the circles in the middle bigger or smaller in order to go by one stitch to make it easier to grade. Which, if I wouldn't have done the grading first, I would have knit the chart as is for my own sample, and then realized dude, seriously, that's an odd number. Good luck with that one. But instead, I changed it before I even cast on, and so now it makes more sense, where the split for sleeves is a certain number, that it's a similar number for the chart, and then the ribbing is a different number, but it's all multiples of each other, so it just flows. Where a different sweater that I knit that has a lot of details in it, so it has noops and color work, and then more noops, and then ribbing, I ended up each row would have to decrease by one stitch or increase by one stitch, and I had to do that for all sizes in different areas, because the designs weren't multiples of each other. So it was so many different numbers, and then all of a sudden you're decreasing by one stitch in order to get that it's an even number, because if you're doing a 2x2 ribbing, it has to be a multiple of 4. Anyways, so now I figured all of that ahead of time to where I can just knit the sample, and ta-da! All the numbers work, which is great for me because, like I said, I can't do numbers. So yeah, so that is all the questions I have for today. Again, if you think of any questions that came up while you were watching, please submit them in the Google form below. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you can get any new updates for future podcasts. And again, if you're interested in colorwork knitting, I'm going to dive a little deeper on that next episode. So this episode was a little bit about brioche, and next episode is going to be more about colorwork. So we'll talk about that. Check out my patterns that are coming out. Thank you so much for watching this episode and for commenting, subscribing, following me on Instagram, or signing up for my newsletter, where Oh, if you sign up for my newsletter, I always give a 50% off coupon for any of my new patterns. I should have said that earlier. Sorry. So if you're interested in any of my new upcoming patterns, make sure to subscribe to my newsletter, so my email newsletter below, because I always send out a 50% off coupon for just newsletter subscribers. So make sure to get signed up for that. And thank you again for being such an amazing knitting community. You really make what I'm doing so worthwhile, and I love it, but I love sharing it with you more. So thank you for being here.